My name is Ghostboy259 and I played Tobla Divine Path. Tobla Divine Path is a first-person puzzler, and obviously when you think of such games, you probably think of Portal. And this game is heavily inspired by Portal, as a lot of these games are, but it doesn't try to hide from it. Developed by Nementic Games, they were not shy about leaning into the fact that at its core, this is a Portal fan game, and honestly, I like that better, just be honest about it. But at its best, it does mean the game is very similar to Portal, which means it's going to draw a lot of comparisons throughout this video because I just can't help it. If you want to experience this game for yourself first, you should. It's a fun puzzler and it's only about 3 hours long, but if you maybe want to experience the game along with me and watch me struggle to beat very easy puzzles, the highlight video is at youtube.com/realityescapeplays, and of course you can come watch me play the games that I cover on this channel live at twitch.tv/ghostboy259. If you want to join the Discord and support me and these videos on Patreon, all the links are at realityescape.ca. And hey, if you want to discover a cool unheard of indie or AA game every Sunday, hit subscribe. Due to the nature of this game, some solutions to puzzles might be spoiled just from background footage, but I will try to avoid mentioning anything directly here, and I will put a spoiler warning at the end. The plot of this game is that you're a mortal human who has been sucked into a formless goddess's test chambers, with your goal being to complete the tasks for her and make it to the end. Yeah, no, I'm not kidding. She starts off the game as a friend and then slowly turns evil and ends up being the final boss. Where have we heard this before? Like I said, the game doesn't really try to hide the fact that it's a Portal fan game, and I admire the honesty. However, this game does come with a twist. The goddess named Tobla is represented by the eye, and she gives you the power to swap the positioning of items. So instead of using portals to typically teleport the character around, you are teleporting two objects to the other's position. It almost feels like something you would see in a Portal 3 game if they wanted to give the player something beyond a portal gun. That is, if it was a company other than Valve making a Portal 3. Shoot one object to load it, shoot another, and the items will swap places. Black items can be picked up and moved around, stone items cannot. Later levels introduce grids, yes, much like the Emancipation grids in Portal, one where you cannot save a loaded swap teleport thing through it, and the other where you can't shoot through it. If you have played Portal, the gameplay is very instinctual and the learning curve will be somewhat minimal. If you haven't played Portal or a game similar to it, I imagine you'd be quite challenged at first, as the game really puts you right in the middle of things early on. There's not really much of a tutorial. The game also introduces a slightly unique powering up concept where you'll have these diamond-shaped boxes stuck in the ground, and teleporting a box beside it that's the same color will activate that diamond. And these will do a variety of things like moving a platform or opening a door. Outside of a few things at the end, this is really the gist of the whole game, and it's not hard to see how many puzzles can be made from this formula. Later on, they introduce rolling physics, where you'll need to actually time switching between rolling balls and still blocks in order to get over ramps, and it's a bit tricky at first because the balls will maintain whichever cardinal direction they're going, so sometimes you expect it to go one way and it goes another. The environments are nothing to write home about. There's two very distinct looks, with one being the first 2 hours of the game where you're really just doing puzzles for no reason, and the third hour being the part where you're trying to accomplish a bigger goal and using the game's mechanics to do it. I do think maybe it could have used a little bit of simplifying. I think sometimes there's just a bit too much to look at and you can lose sight of the greater goal overall. But game mechanics aside, it's quite a pleasant aesthetic. I think the game really suffers from its length. It's got the formula down packed and it's enjoyable and it picks at your brain, and I would have loved to have seen 3 or 4 more hours of this, or maybe some DLC where it's just levels and no story. Unlike Portal, where some levels will just click with you and you'll get them done really fast, and then you'll have others that you just struggle on for way too long, I really found myself struggling on pretty much all of these levels, albeit I'm not very good at these games naturally, and I think that's another thing that an extended tutorial could have covered. Like, you get these momentum mechanics with moving these balls, but the game doesn't teach you anything about it. You just have to figure it out on your own. Which wouldn't be so bad if there wasn't 30 minutes of dialogue in the game with nothing of note being said, so it just kind of feels like, why weren't they using this time elsewhere? I'm not opposed to players figuring things out for themselves, but I think for a puzzle game, you should give the players a foundation, teach them what to do, and then amp up the difficulty through the puzzles from there. I don't necessarily think discovering how the puzzles work should be a part of that difficulty. Likewise, a variety of here's some easy levels, then a hard level, then an easy level, then a hard level just makes everything flow a lot smoother. It makes you feel a little bit smarter and like you're progressing more rather than just getting stuck at every turn. In the later levels, they introduce bombs, which only have a certain amount of moves before they automatically explode, and enemy turrets, some which can be moved and some which cannot. But there's only like 3 or 4 levels where they're used, which is just so disappointing because it feels like there's so much more they could do, and it feels like the whole game comes alive in this last little act and then it just goes away. But I also understand that designing levels and having them tested can be very time consuming, and who knows how long it could have delayed the game's release to have everything done. Ultimately, I only got stuck for a long time at 2 different puzzles. One of them I kept soft locking in by accident. And while oftentimes I enjoy the short and sweet approach, this game is in a very unique place where I was satisfied, and even then I was wanting more. I was mostly confused as to why there wasn't more. It almost felt like just a really long demo or a proof of concept that really could be expanded upon. Tobla's dialogue, while the voice actress is great, is really long and rambly, and like, I'm a Forspoken defender. I think creators should put whatever kind of dialogue and characters in their games that they want, whatever speaks to them. And if people don't want to play those games because of it, that's fine. But sometimes it does feel like the internet is trying to bully indie game creators into not having certain types of dialogue, and I just don't have time for that kind of thing. Make stuff how you want it, but all that being said, it still is a lot of rambly dialogue. The story is nothing to write home about. After 2 sentences at the beginning of the game, you kind of know how it's gonna go, which, you know, it's short, so there's not a lot of time or room for a story like that. And like, yeah, you know, I get it, you have to have something going on, and maybe it would be weird if there was no story, but I'm willing to bet for anyone who played, the story was the weakest part and maybe the part that weighs down their review the most. Despite all that, the core concept is really fun. It's a legitimate puzzler, and yeah, it takes a lot of inspiration from Portal, but just the concept of switching 2 item positions instead of your own just opens up the world to a ton of possibilities. And there's a lot of cool mechanics at the end of the game that they're only there for a brief moment, but it felt like a fun way to end the experience. I know it's a small indie developer, but I just wanted a bit more. Community maps, DLCs, just something a little bit more. It never feels like the game gets insanely hard, and I almost feel like that's a missed opportunity, although, you know, I struggled enough as it is. I'm also not saying that this should be a 12-hour puzzle game by any means, but it just feels like all the assets are there, and it just feels like there is so much potential to do something bigger or something greater than just this 3-hour game. It feels like there's a huge long game trapped in this one. That being said though, the game isn't a disappointment. They just played it safe, and sometimes you have to do that for outside reasons completely unrelated to what you want to do. There is a part of me that hopes they come back to this concept, really focus on puzzle design, give us a few more elements, or even just use the ones that we already had a little bit more. Cut back on the dialogue a little bit, sure, and I think this game could be something really cool and special. Alright, I'm going to go into slight spoiler territory here for the final section of the game. The final boss fight takes advantage of more platforming and timing things whilst also doing the switches, which is something almost the entirety of the base game lacks. And I'm kind of glad it's done that way because it makes it very different at the end. The earlier levels are puzzles and you're stopping to think about things, but now you have to do puzzles while also keeping yourself alive. The stages are really cool and you have to do a ton of thinking on the fly because you have bombs and turrets at you, and when you finally realize what the answer is, you go, of course that's what it is, but you were so busy keeping yourself alive it made it seem a lot harder. Although I can also see the argument for why people wouldn't like that because it's so different from the rest of the game. The final fight involves you shooting bombs at the eye, unfortunately in an extremely similar way to the end of the first Portal game, that it kind of fell a bit flat for me. Like, it's still very hard to figure out, and I still really liked it. It's legitimately great and fun. It just reminded me so much of the original Portal game that I was like, of course that's what it had to be, but I don't know if there was a way around that. I think it's a really good ending boss fight, and I think it's also very similar to Portal. Both things are true. I'd have to say my biggest criticism of the game is that I never got to feel lost in it. I think the dialogue took me out more than anything, but I never got to feel like, wow, this is its own game, and not a heavily inspired Portal-like game. Even at its most original moments, it's still very much reminding you of Portal. And that kind of sucks because I like so much what they have here, so I wish I could have said it stood out on its own a little bit. Now, look, at the end of the day, I paid $4 for this game on sale. I got 3 really fun hours out of it, and if you're a big Portal fan with a few bucks in your pocket and a few hours to spare, I'd say go for it. It won't fill the void in your heart for a new Portal game, but it might scratch the itch for a night. And if anything, it may help you think more critically about what you enjoyed about the Portal series as compared to a game like this. Puzzle games are very hard to make original. You basically have to make your own game of chess, teach the player how to play that chess, and then create a challenge for the player using the rules you've made, and there's a lot to consider. By borrowing a lot of an already established formula, Tobla Divine Path still managed to make some really cool, really original puzzles. Was it the best game ever? No. Is it better than Portal? No. But I really think the biggest shortcoming of this game is just that it played it a little bit too safe because I think it had more to do and more to say. I said a lot of positive things about the game in this video. I'm not trying to sell it to you like it's the best thing ever. It's upper echelon of average at best, and the other reviews on Steam would agree with me. There's something there, but it's not quite all there. It looks like this developer group has a lot of different things going on, and it looks like they've completely moved on from this and they're already working on their next thing. I don't see a reason why they would ever come back to this, but if anyone out there is watching this and thinking of making their own puzzle game, whether it's Portal inspired or not, my 2 requests would be: 1, make sure you teach the player fully and properly how to play, let them build up to the harder levels, and 2, don't be afraid to take some chances. Playing a game that's safe can be fun, and in this case I think Tobla was fun, but I'm left wanting more, and I'm not just meaning more as in the sense of I wanted more game, but in the sense of it being more than this is a lot like Portal. But at the end, that's just my thoughts. And I am but a mortal. A mortal named Ghostboy259. She calls you Mort in the game for mortal. I realize saying a mortal named Ghostboy is like a little bit oxymoronic because like Ghostboy, ghost, not immortal, because I'm... Anyway, and I played Tobla the Divine Path. Next time, I'll play something else. Thanks for watching.